So last patch, we saw the most amount of champion changes in a single patch all season. And now in 25.13, Riot has flipped the script and is going to be issuing the smallest patch that we have seen all year. So we're going to have the quick rundown of everything that we can expect to hit live servers for this upcoming Wednesday, June 25th. So first, for the champion buffs, Briar is going to be receiving a quality of life buff to her W to where attacks can no longer be canceled. E-post cancel cast time is being altered from matching Briar's attack cast time to now being set at 0.15 seconds. Riot has stated that this will be a net buff to Briar's E as long as you're building her without attack speed. We've got a buff to Fiddlestick's W damage as the AP ratio is going up from 80 to 90%. Fiddle honestly really hasn't been in a bad spot lately for jungle, so with a buff coming through, he's definitely going to be one of the better S-tier junglers for solo queue in 25.13. If Fiddle players would actually build him correctly, then he'd be performing even better analytically in solo queue, as the majority of Fiddle players do continue to rush Malignants, while Rocket Belt has been outperforming ever since Rocket Belt got buffed in 25.10. We have two buffs for Gangplank on the way, with his Q mana cost being lowered from 55 scaling to 35 to 50 scaling to 30. Our cooldown is going to be reduced by 10 seconds at all ranks, so nothing too over the top here, but a small nudge to Gangplank nonetheless. Irelia on the buff list is definitely a bit of a surprise, as she's been a pretty good solo queue performer lately up in the top lane. She's getting a similar buff to what we saw Jax receive last patch, as Irelia's passive attack speed is up from 7.5 scaling to 25% to 10 scaling to 25%. Irelia's passive is also receiving a bug fix so that the attack speed now updates on level up while your passive is active. Kindred's going to be able to save herself more often next patch, with her R cooldown dropping from 180 scaling to 120 seconds to 160 scaling to 120 seconds. So it's 20 seconds off at rank 1, 10 seconds off at rank 2, and then the cooldown stays the same at max rank. Kindred's R really isn't a spell that you can actively use off cooldown though, as it's really only used in defense, so we're not expecting Kindred to gain a ton of power from this buff. Now if Mal's or Ahri were to receive a buff like this to their R, it would land way more impactful for solo queue, because you can actually use their R very consistently right off cooldown, whereas you really can't as often with Kindred R. Nidalee's buff from last patch didn't positively influence her power for solo queue at all, so Riot has another buff planned for 25.13, as her spear damage range scaling is up from 100 scaling to 300% to 100 scaling to 325%. So short range spear damage stays the same, but those max range snipes are going to be hitting a little bit harder now. The 25.12 Rammus mini rework ended up missing the marks, so Riot has some follow-up buffs cooked up for him. Health growth is going to be increased from 94 to 100. W resist are going from 27 flat to 27 scaling to 47. So a bit more tankiness being added to Rammus for 25.13, which at the very least should put him back in a viable spot, as he was one of the worst junglers for 25.12. Riot just buffed Ryze a few patches ago, but they're pulling back on some of that strength for a few nerfs, as W base damage is dropping by 10 at all ranks, and then W mana cost is going up by 10 at rank 1, but dropping by 10 at max rank. Actually somewhat impactful nerfs here, considering Ryze's W is a point-and-click spell, and whenever damage is taken off a point-and-click spell, it always hurts more than that of a skill shot being nerfed. Ryze shouldn't be a terrible pick as a result, but he definitely won't be a high priority mid for 25.13 either, at least for solo queue, as pro play is definitely a whole different story. We had moved Twisted Fate up into the OP tier for mid lane in our recent tier list, so it's fitting Riot has decided to nerf him in 25.13. Our cooldown is going to be going up from 160 scaling to 100 seconds to 170 scaling to 110 seconds. So this is a partial revert to the buff that they gave him last patch, as the initial buff shaved off 20 seconds, and then this revert now means it's a 10-second buff relative to where TF was back in 25.11. Honestly, Twisted Fate should still remain a great pickup for this coming patch, because the majority of players are building him incorrectly, and if more players would drop the nerfed Rod of Ages and just run Rocket Belt, he'd be overperforming even more. It feels like every single patch as of late has some sort of Vi change, and 25.13 is absolutely no exception, as her passive shield max health ratio is dropping from 14 to 12%. So Vi has been a very problematic pick in the pro scene for a while now, so even though her win rate has been pretty low in solo queue, hovering around 48 to 49% in recent patches, she continues to be targeted due to her heavy priority in pro play. And then for the final champion change of the patch, we have Yorick receiving a nerf to his base armor, as it's dropping from 39 to 36. So we're probably going to be looking at around a 0.5% drop in win rate due to this nerf, and if that's the case, Yorick won't be losing very much power cover it all in 25.13. Okay, guys, one last thing. Our rank up guarantee is absolutely insane. It's kind of like signing up for the gym and then just getting a refund if you don't get ripped. That's how confident we are in SkillCapped. We obsess over making the best guides with the top players, the rigorous testing, and top-tier video editing to make your climb as easy as possible. If you're ready to level up, just visit skillcapped.com and literally see the difference. So there you have it, everyone. That was a quick rundown of all the changes that we can expect to hit live servers this upcoming Wednesday, June 25th. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you back soon.